who is the most promising Republican candidate not in the race yet?
Oh, gosh. Not in the race yet? Well, almost none of them are in the race yet.
Well,
I suppose Jeb Bush, he does the best in the polls and hasn't officially announced anything, so I'd give him as my answer.
You know, I go back to Mitt Romney. I mean, look, you don't like old faces, but you know what? He did run a good game last time.
Sounds strange, but I still can't figure out why John Thune hasn't looked at this more seriously.
oh, that's interesting.
If they get to nominate Hillary Clinton, why don't we get to nominate Dick Cheney? I mean, he has a much better record.
All right, there it is. And joining us now is, of course, the one and only Bill Kristol, founder and editor of the Weekly Standard, ABC News contributor, there with George Stephanopoulos on This Week. And Bill, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, good. So let me ask you this. You know, if Dick Cheney were healthy, let's say, and I mean, if it came down to this point, if there was a mock election held that didn't count, but people got to weigh in, or maybe people started taking polls, Hillary versus Dick Cheney, how do you think he'd do?
I don't know. The media did such a job on him, and he didn't really defend himself there in the Bush administration that he might be behind a little bit. But, you know, he could get in his van and have the Secret Service drive him around to Pennsylvania and Ohio and Iowa, go to Chipotle, be a regular everyday American. The great irony is Dick Cheney is an everyday American. Dick Cheney drives his granddaughter to rodeo competitions in Wyoming, and he drives himself in a van that's got like one of those horse things hooked up in the back for the rodeo horse. And, you know, that's what's the Hillary thing. Can that possibly work? Are people going to look at that and think, "Oh, that's great. She's just mixing and mingling with the peasants out there. That just shows how much in touch she is with the rest of us"?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, the way it reeks of insincerity to think. I mean, I know she ran that way for the Senate seat in New York, and I guess they think it worked. In this way, she doesn't have to say anything because she's already announced she's just going to be listening.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's, I guess, stupid from their point of view. They don't want to say anything controversial. It gets her out there. People talk about her. Maybe it softens the edges. Kind of, oh, yeah, she seems like a nice woman. But it's also kind of just weird. She goes into some Chipotle with her aide, and they have sunglasses on, and they just buy their burrito and don't talk to anyone. And I don't know. I keep saying if she wants to behave, you know, be like a regular American, she should get on the plane in LaGuardia, sit in seat 25E or whatever, and, you know, have a delayed flight out to Des Moines like the rest of us do. And instead of having the Secret Service drive her out there in a sort of in a weird, quite expensive van, actually. Daniel Halper was able to do some research on it, and it's a $60,000 plus van with, of course, a bed in the back and a big TV, and sort of all set up for someone like Secretary Clinton.
Yeah, well, so it certainly changes the definition of Hillary driving 1,000 miles in a van. But all right, so Marco Rubio, I think we both agree that he really was impressive yesterday.
Yeah, even the media's had to acknowledge it. I mean, the media's pathetic on Clinton, the degree of credulousness or credulity, whatever the right word is, about, you know, oh, she's really reinventing herself. It's so spontaneous. Whereas Marco Rubio did what he's done. He gave a speech that's from the heart, that he's similar to other speeches I've seen him give. And I was struck that the liberal media seemed never to have seen him. So they were like, wow, he actually gives a pretty good speech. Wow, he's a pretty intelligent and articulate guy. It's like, what planet have these people been on? But, of course, they don't listen to conservatives. They never actually cover them, and then they're sort of impressed. So I think it's good. Honestly, if you think about the people who've launched, Cruz, Rubio, and who else? I'm missing one more. Paul.
Cruz, Rubio, and Paul, yeah.
Yeah. Rand Paul, I think, had a little bit of a shaky launch. But I'd say, you know, Cruz and Rubio, you look at those two, you watch those two speeches, and you got to think, gee, the Republican Party's future is not that bad, you know.
Two minority candidates.
That too, and, you know, giving articulate speeches, conservative, Cruz a little more detailed, Rubio a little more aspirational, but a real conservative, future-oriented conservative vision, 21st century. I just think I like Rubio's hashtag on Twitter, New American Century. I really do think that he can run an effective campaign against Hillary, but I think Cruz could too, and Walker could too, and Jindal could too. That she really is from the last century. I mean, that's when she was in the White House. And I really think that, I don't know, I'm not a huge believer usually in this generational stuff, but having been on the wrong end of it in 92 when I was in the first Bush White House and Clinton and Gore ran as the 43-year-olds against the kind of out-of-touch, you know, Cold War-era president, I got to think Rubio, Walker, those guys can run a pretty effective similar campaign against Hillary Clinton.
Briefly, you wrote a great piece about the Iran deal, so-called deal. We have the Senate committee is going to pass that bill. Looks like there's agreement in the Senate to pass this bill, which would put Congress approval in the way of any completion of a deal. But the White House today doubling down, saying they will veto it. Do you think it would? They'll have the votes eventually to override a veto?
Well, they might, but then they'd, of course, still have to disapprove of the deal and then override that veto. I think they've got to go on all cylinders against this deal, but also other ways of making clear how just terrible a deal President Obama and his team seem to have succeeded in negotiating or not negotiating. They just made concessions, frankly. What about the Russians? I mean, they just humiliating Obama, really.
Yeah, the missiles. Now they got the missile system that could will have it that could thwart any kind of military option. So it's a big mess. Bill, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much. Bill Kristol, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, Noah Rothman. Don't go away.